Welcome back to the McCoy Leadership Podcast, elevating your impact through valuable insights and conversations about leadership. Welcome back to another episode of the McCoy Leadership Podcast. Today we have Marcylle Combs with us, which is a leader with a passion for people. Marcylle is from the healthcare industry and has over 30 years of experience. She has grown businesses, started businesses, sold businesses. But out of all of that, I found most fascinating, she's very in tune with her leadership style and how she leads people. Marcylle, thank you so much for joining us. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today?
You know, my journey, I'll try to give you the shorter version of this because, one, I'm old, so therefore makes the journey longer. But as you said, I was a nurse, didn't ever have a business class, wandered around doing different things, got into home health and hospice, fell in love with it, frankly, and had a guy who was about my age who was a business guy, and he inspired me to really think bigger than perhaps I had thought. I had 4 kids at that time. I have 5 total children, and he got to the point he wanted to sell the business, and I really, frankly, my husband was in a PhD program, and we didn't have any money, but somehow I just knew, if you talk to entrepreneurs, whether it needs to be educated gut feeling, but I just had this, and I am a person of faith, I had this overwhelming mission that I was supposed to buy this business. And through really a help from him and other people, I bought that first business. I went on, I think I've had 7 or 8 different businesses. I've managed a whole home services division for a large hospital system. And then I've bought and sold. I sold my very large business, which was about $70 million a year, about 6 years ago now. It'll be 6 years in August, but didn't have enough sense to retire. So therefore, I started 3 more businesses, one to do consulting. One is the Marcylle Combs Company, which I have just published a new book and is more like, leadership training and leadership coaching and speaking. And then I have some real estate investments. So I have a pretty wide background in business and pretty much learned all of it prior to the internet being such a great source from books like all the dummy books, on how to start a company, how to start a nonprofit, how to make things work. The dummy books are great books. So any of the, starting a business for dummies. So I have no interest in financial interest in those books, but they are good, very basic things for someone who wants to do something.
Absolutely. I've said for years, my bookshelf is full of the idiot's guides and the, whatever subject for dummies.
Yes.
Because I think you touched on it. You never took a business class, but yet you're a business leader. And right. I tell young folks all the time that you do not need to go to college and get an MBA to become a success in business, but you got to get an education. And it doesn't matter right. how you get that education. You may get it from the Idiot's Guide for, Excel or what have you. So I think that's wonderful. I am curious, which I guess I'm jumping ahead a little bit in my mind, but you started out in that home healthcare hospice world. And you talk a good bit about that leadership is not a position but a choice. Which I would agree wholeheartedly with. But I'm curious, what lessons in those early days maybe did you learn by working with people and seeing people at the end of life? Were there any valuable lessons out of that helped to shape your leadership style today?
Well, I can everything I did probably did most of it wrong at least once, if not a few times. So it's hard to say what lessons did I learn because there's so many that it's hard to keep up. I think one of the first ones really was something that's core to me and core to my business then is I had two customers, and we called them internal and external customers. And our external customers were more than just the patients we took care of. Now, I'm a registered nurse by background. I have my bachelor's degree, my Bachelor of Science degree. So I came at it from a clinical perspective. But the external customers were the people who gave us referrals, doctors, hospitals, you know, people at the front desk of a hospital or doctor's office. Those were our customers there. And then our other customers were the patients and their families because we did home based type services, mostly elderly, mostly paid through Medicare. And it's a long, funny story, but I swore I would never work with the elderly because I said I would become too attached to them and it would be too hard for me. But you always end up doing some of the things, if not all the things that you say that you're not going to do. And then my other customers, because we were a service business, were our employees. And that's kind of where I'm going to show my book here. You didn't give me the unpaid political announcement that I could do. And it's never hire your friends, and you cross out never, which basically means always hire your friends. And that's what I learned from my first management position, of which I was not qualified for. But I learned through a good mentor friend of mine who helped rescue me a few times, and also just by doing some things wrong. But through that, I learned, we spend most of our lives at work. I mean, we really do. At least a good 40% of our lives are spent at work. So why would you want to work with people that you didn't like? Or, yes, people are all different kinds of personalities, and I say it's like rainbow sherbet. They're all different flavors, and that makes the best team. But if they are just not a nice person, why would you want to hire them? And again, let me put that disclaimer in. I have people who were very precise and organized, and everything was black and white. And then I have people who are very crazy, outgoing, and brought lively. Those two things working in the same setting, if you can get them to like each other, will make a beautiful team. So that's kind of a long answer, Amos, but that was probably my biggest lesson, was that I was going to have a workplace that I was going to insist that we get along positively, and I was going to hire people that I liked. And from a very small agency all the way up to where I am today.
So I am curious because it happens to all of us. Sometimes we hire that person that we like to find out that we don't like them. And what do you do in that situation?
Well, I believe in friendship management, and sometimes the very best thing you can do for an employee is to terminate their position. It can be the hardest thing in their life. And I will say our goal was to hire fast, fire slow, which is also a little controversial. You need to, one, have true evidence. Two, you need to make sure it's not a education thing. Have you or the people around you done the job? Do they understand the expectations? And my leadership style is, I'm going to give you a gift when you start. I'm going to automatically trust you. And you are going to have to prove me wrong that I can't trust you. Because, see, the business I worked in, which is a lot like what we've had to do through COVID, most of the employees were not in the office. There was no, let me have them in the office so I can watch them all the time. And on top of that, I would tell them openly, the minute I start, you give me a reason to not trust you is the minute you ought to really be thinking, I've got to make some changes or I've got to find another job, because I don't want to do that. And so I gave them a gift of trust and said, you have to prove to me that I can't trust you. And I would say our turnover rate in all companies has been well below the average. Sure, we've made some bad mistakes with hire. That's why I say, if you don't like them on their interview, you're probably never going to like them, because that should be their best step forward.
Absolutely.
So, and I've had people go on after it just wasn't the right job for them. We didn't have a right job. They've gone on to start their own businesses. They've gone back to get degrees. I'm saying, if you've gotten terminated either due to reasons or due to a layoff, that's not your ending. That's your opportunity for a beginning. And it's probably your best electric shock beginning to restart.
Absolutely. You mentioned there, and it's just a comical story on my end of understanding. When I had a concrete block plant early in my career, I had a young man that came in, started working, and one of his jobs was to clean the mixer at the end of the night. And the second day he came in and he was all red. From head to toe, he was just red. And I said, what's going on with you? And he said, I don't know. So we sent him to Occupational Health, and they came back and they said he has this young man is allergic to cement dust.
Wow.
And so they gave him some tips and some things that he could do. And he wanted to keep his job. He loved it. He loved everything that he did. And
Wow.
so he looked like a mummy. He was all bundled up, and about the third day, it's getting worse.
Oh.
And I brought him in and I sat him down. And my point is that was the moment that I realized, and that that's a severe moment for him.
Right.
But he wanted this job. He loved it, but he couldn't do it. It was not good for him physically.
Yeah. Right.
And I remember letting him go, and it was just one of those odd situations where, you're letting somebody go that you can see yourself that
did nothing.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, it was the best thing for him. And, I lost track of him a few years after that. He went on and found other jobs, but that was when it hit me that, there can be somebody that it's just not the right fit for them.
Yeah.
But you grew,
I agree.
You grew a business, from very small to over 1,200 employees and 12 locations. Now, when you start getting, past 20, 30 employees and you get up to 1,200, how do your thought, number one, of making sure when they come in, you give them a gift of trust. I like that. How do you do that with 1,200? How do you instill that, and how do you make sure that your other leaders within the organization are continuing to do that?
Well, let me say, the larger you get, the harder it is. And that's because you have to mentor the next generation, or a group of people. And you can't just mentor them. You've got to mentor them enough to be able to mentor the people under them. And that is a much harder bar. We did all kinds of things to try to make that happen. On top of the fact, we had 3 pillars, and the pillars were we did quality patient care. You mess with our patients, you really don't get another chance. You steal from them, you mistreat them. Of course, we investigate and make sure that's a fair analysis. But we do quality patient care. We don't care what the competition does. This is what we do. This. you we have fun at work. This is going to be a joyful workplace, and we have fun at work. And 3, you are confidential about the things that should be confidential, which is pay rates and, how our trade secrets and anything like that. And we wanted to make sure in those 3 simple things that everyone could repeat that. And on top of that, we would have leaders who weren't very much fun. So we sometimes would send them a box of fun so that they could try to have fun, or give them ways to replicate the fun. Because I think if you can laugh in a situation where you have a whole lot of hospice patients, it's a relief for your emotional state. And I don't mean laugh certainly at the situation, but you have to find other situations where things are funny. Like when your nurse is asked to crawl under the house and get the new baby kittens out. And the horse is chasing her around trying to grab her wig off her head. So you can't make some of that up, but you can laugh about it when they come back in the office. So, we have so many funny stories that some can be said on air and some cannot.
It never has occurred to me before, and I'm just curious. The emotional toll on all those people that are in the field in your specific business. Is there anything that has to be done or should be done or consideration given for, that emotional state you mentioned early that I'm sure many of them have connection and attachment. I'll call it, maybe that's not the right wording, but these are people that are caring for folks that maybe are coming towards the end of life, and as they lose patients and so on and so forth. Is there anything from a management standpoint that you would have to do differently than a manufacturing facility or something like that? I'm just curious.
Absolutely, truly. We and a lot of that has to do with some of the ceremonies that they do. It has to do with the stories. Hospice in particular, their motto is not to help you die well, but to help you live every day until you do die. Hospice sometimes is gotten a bad rap. We don't bring hospice in early enough for families and patients, and really a lot of times it's the families so that they have time to go over. But for our own employees, they have group meetings. They talk about their patients. They talk about the journeys of the stories behind the patients, which, I have a podcast too. So therefore, I love interviewing people and I love knowing people's stories. But some of the people you walk into the house with, one of the ones I love to tell the story of most, someone who owned a diamond mine in Africa. Now, this is a little rural Texas town with a little couple living in a very modest home, and they tell me how they barely escaped a revolution in Africa, and they had owned a diamond mine. You can't make that stuff up. And to be able to talk to a person who walked and lived that life, and then to come back to the office and tell about that person, it helps people walk through their emotions. We had one time a hospice that lost in one weekend 45% of their census. We did all kinds of memorials that week because it was a huge loss, just psychologically and emotionally, much less from a business perspective.
Fascinating. I'm just thinking, I think there's a lot to be learned there for the rest of us that are not in healthcare, any other type of business. Whatever is going on in someone's life, many times you will hear, a business owner say, well, that's their problem, not mine, or something of that nature. But the reality is, I'm not suggesting that, in a manufacturing plant, they need to take 2 hours a day to have group meetings, for the employees, but giving them an area where they can talk about what's going on, what's happening, because ultimately it affects what your throughput is, whether you're a consulting business, a healthcare business, or anything else. So I find that fascinating, and it seems like you guys did a really good job of trying to give your employees a safe space to kind of work their way through those things. So I am switching gears slightly, because as I went through all the things that you have done throughout your career, I wanted to make sure we touched on, you have over 30 mission trips under your belt. And I always love to ask for folks that have been out, done mission trips, or even just traveled to different parts of the world, kind of two questions. One, in traveling to different areas, what area impacted you the most? And the second question, I love to hear, is there anywhere on the globe that just has it figured out a little bit better than what we do here? So 2-part question.
So that was a 2-part question.
Yes.
And you jump in if I don't answer this. Well, let me say this. I haven't really found, and I do travel mission and otherwise. I can honestly say no one's got it completely figured out because, there are things that people do better than others. The United States medical system has gotten a bad rap, but truly we have the standard of excellence in the world. Part of the reason some of our statistics show differently is because we treat and diagnose illnesses where other countries would not. And that's way off on a tangent, so I won't do there. We did, I about 10 years before I sold, I had a gal whose husband had been a preacher boy, and we sat down and came up with this idea that we would try to develop a nonprofit that would be supportive, because most of my employees were women, and so therefore just the nature of the business, because nurses are primarily women, and so most of our people were women. And we had a big group of that. Some kind of training that they could improve on, some kind of offerings where you could help a working woman try to figure out how to handle everything. Continues 2025, we still have lots of the same issues. But in the other part, it was to allow our employees to give back. So we would partner with different ministries, Word at Work up in Amarillo, Mission Discovery, which is all over, Samaritan's Purse, and we would match our employees' time off. We felt that the employee needed to give something of themselves. So we would match their PTO. We would put some parameters on how many times they could do that a year. I'm giving you kind of the basics. And then we would cover lodging and food and that kind of thing when we were on site. I personally was most impacted. Now, let me just tell you this. This other gal and I, she was rip-roaring to go. My thought, and I am wrong in this, but my thought always had been, some people are called to go and some people are called to give. And I was the one who was called to give. Let me support you. Let me send you finances. I'm a shallow creature comfort person who wants to make sure there are no known bugs in my bed. But on a trip, someone they got sick and they couldn't go. And really, frankly, I'm a fairly decent teacher. And I was the only one that could go. And I didn't know my cohort was praying that I would go. And this was to Belize. I went 9 or 10 years in a row, sometimes more than 1 year, to Belize. We helped them. They have they're in a quote, quote, unquote, an emerging country still, the only English speaking country in South America. And they were starting a hospice. So we went 9, 10 times to Belize, helped them develop, brought a couple of their people here to the United States, helped them develop the standards for hospice in their country, and got them enacted. I've seen many, many patients in Belize. What I would tell you is it did give me the perspective where, as Medicare Home Health and Hospice, you're a government contractor, if you will. So we're at the whim of whoever's in Congress and whoever's got an ink pen, and you're cut or raised, which mainly we were cut. Over and over and over, year after year after year. Our people wanted more money. They complained about everything. The perspective of anybody who went, these were all volunteers. Nobody got paid. They had physician-led teams because only the physician could have the money to have a car and the gas to get there. The hospitals would give them supplies, but outside of that, it was just people working 10 hours a day and then volunteering after they got off work to go into sick and dying patients' houses and try to do what you could do. It's an overwhelming. If someone out there has never been on a mission trip of any kind, and I can only speak to the healthcare perspective. Now, our other teams did lots of different things with ministry and prisons and disaster relief. But for me, I took what I do best and volunteered doing that. And it is a humbling. It made you come back and say, I complain about all these things, but these people are doing it without getting any payment to. So maybe I need to adjust my attitude a little bit on how frustrated I am. I know that's a very long answer, but we had teams who did, like I said, but always in partnership, especially overseas, and really mostly here too. We did do some things directly, but almost always partnering with another organization, because we didn't have, if you're a business out there and you want to try to do this, you can partner with these guys, take your own team, and they take care of like all the legal stuff, all that, and help support what you're doing.
So you started that conversation with you had always believed that you were the giver, not the
You're
goer.
Right. Not the goer.
And then you went, and if I heard correctly, you kept going.
You did hear correctly. Not because I wanted to, because Belize is the hottest humid I live in Texas, so let's let the audience know that. So when I say I have never been so hot, and so thankful for refrigerated air, whoever invented that, thank you. Because the places we stayed had air, but it's not the kind of air you're going to walk in here, partially because it's just so expensive, and partially just because of the types of units we have here versus there.
So from a leadership standpoint, I think it is, I'm kind of drawing a line there, and I'm seeing that within your career and your life. As a leader, sometimes we have to do things that are uncomfortable to us. And sometimes we're doing those things because God called us to do that.
Right.
And
exactly.
You sounds like you had one of those experiences. How did that shift your leadership of your businesses and your things here at home, Annie? what was the impact once you realized and you went and you did that mission trip? Was there a positive impact here at home on your leadership and what you were doing here?
Oh, I think 100% of the people who participated in any of those trips, from a retention perspective, that they weren't going anywhere. Um, they saw an organization that walked and talked what they did. I think you can't, for me personally, I just got to say this. You don't have the thing there in the United States, you can buy anything you want.
Yep.
Pretty much and get it. But there you couldn't. I mean, even if you had the money, even if you had someone with big dollars in their pockets, due to all kinds of, things that we do for the good, sometimes you can end up with something that equals bad. So I would say it changed my attitude, one, toward just going on one of these mission trips. Not everyone could go because they had family situations that they just could not. And you had to apply, get your supervisors to approve, blah, blah, blah. We had a whole system inside. But I think it made me have a more global attitude of sometimes the best care doesn't always come from what you get paid for. The best care can come from your heart. Even if you don't have all the tools, we all are going to die, Amos. And I think we forget that in the U.S. until it's starkly sitting in front of us, and people want to avoid it. But that should not be how we approach it. It should be, we're going to live every day till we die to the best of our ability and hope that we finish well, that we finish the race well.
Absolutely. I was just, I guess a month ago, a little over a month ago, I was in Florida at the John Maxwell International Maxwell Conference, and John said on stage, he was talking about, and I forget his age now right off the top of my head, but he said, I have less years ahead of me than what I have behind me.
Yeah.
And he said, but I'm not retiring. He said, I'm not giving up. He said, people ask him when he's going to slow down. And he says, well, when I die, I'll slow down. I'm going to live every day. And then when I'm dead, well, I'm going to be dead.
That's right.
And it has kind of stuck with me. And as you know, John can be comical at times. And it was just how he delivered that message. But I think that is a huge message. Live every day. Don't quit. There's no finish line for us. So, thinking about our listeners and folks that are out there listening, maybe somebody's building a business or leading a team. What is a piece of practical advice you would give to somebody to help them thrive professionally, but stay true to their values? What would be maybe an actionable step for them to kind of start down the road that you've went down and lead in the way that you teach people to lead?
I would say it's great to have a group together and sit down and come up with your values, but one, they have to be short enough so everyone can, repeat them, and not complicated, lofty enough. They think of yourself of, we have these 3 core principles or these 5 core things, and every decision we make is based on that. If we are struggling, and I would say that hardest thing I ever did in my life was a layoff, because a layoff means you got to do it in a certain way to stay legal. But the people, for the most part, don't deserve to lose their job. Well, you got to go back to your values, and you got to say, our value is, if we have a problem with you, you will be the first person who knows that. You won't hear it as much as we can prevent it from 5 people down the gossip train before you know it. Now, again, layoffs different, because that may or may not be something that people are necessarily are going to know. But if you're going to be fired for some other reason, you should know you're on the edge long before that happens. But with a layoff and it's going to happen suddenly, you should be the first known. That goes back to one of my values. If I have a problem with someone, I take it to that person first. I might need to calm down. I might need to walk around the building. I'm not perfect. I might need to do those things, but you shouldn't be the last to know. Oh, she's unhappy with you, or he's unhappy with you. I think if you can say, if I'm struggling with a decision, do I go back to my values and do I look to my values? One of the other things for me personally, because of the person I am of faith, if someone approaches me about investing or buying, can I say that to the best of my knowledge, their values align with mine? Now, I've made some mistakes in this perspective. I've sold some businesses that didn't turn out the way I thought they should. And I'd freely say, if you're listening to this, I have made that mistake. But I did try to say, is this, can I go back to my values to make decisions? I think most people, and this is with culture too, because your culture is going to come from your values. Are your values just something you write on the door? Are they something you put under your employees' name tag? But what do they really mean? And do you make all decisions? Do you repeat those in your board meetings? Do you say, okay, is fun one of our core values and our budget's been cut? What can we do to have fun that's cheaper? What can we do?
So if I heard correctly, you had, even faced with a challenge, you went back and reviewed your values to make sure that you were acting in alignment
accordingly.
And I think that's a huge point. Many times we, and I think we all do it. I do it. I have a set of values and I have a mission statement. But when I'm looking at that is when I have an opportunity in front of me, not necessarily a challenge. And I think, that is so valuable that even when you have a challenge or something bad, you need to go back and make sure that you're acting in accordance with your values. I think maybe in our minds, when we're creating our values in our mission statement, we're only thinking about the good things, right?
Right.
We're not thinking about the bad things.
Exactly.
So being able to come back to that no matter what, and make sure that we're acting in accordance with our values and our mission statement. I think that's huge. I like that. So as we start to come to an end, I want to make sure I give you an opportunity. Your new book, where can people buy it? And what about folks, maybe they're interested in getting in touch with you? Where can they find you? Where can they get in touch with you?
Well, it's really easy. If you can spell my name, Marcylle Combs, then you can get to my website. But it's MarcylleCombs at where's my brain go? It's MarcylleCombs.com. I was trying to do an email address instead of that. Right. But my website has links to anywhere. It's MarcylleCombs.com, MarcylleCombs.com. You can get my book there. You can also get my book on Amazon. And if you can see it right here, it's a short book. I'm a short girl, and so it's a short book. But it has I tried to include very actionable steps. How can you have better emotional intelligence? Here are the steps to try. It's always the application of the knowledge. If you would like to hear me speak or you have a corporate group, you can go to the MarcylleCombs.com. You can also follow me on social media. I'm on all LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and it's all under Marcylle Combs. So I would love to hear from your listeners, good, bad, or indifferent. Don't talk to me ever again. I will tell you, I've lived these principles in my book, and it is a worthwhile life. I have long-term friends, some of which I still work with, some of which are retired, some of which have moved far, far away or gone to work for some other person. Some people came up to me. I had a book launch, and a girl came up to me and said, I didn't know if you remember me. I worked for you 25 years ago. And I was so honored that after 25 years, wouldn't that be the greatest legacy, Amos, that anyone could give us, is that 25 years later, due to no financial thing, someone stops by and says, hey, I worked for you and I really enjoyed my time with you.
Absolutely. I'm pretty sure the folks that worked for me right at the beginning of my time being a manager probably would run the other way. But that's a different story.
That might be true too. Not me.
But we will be sure to have all of those links in the show notes as well, so that listeners can easily find it. We end every episode with asking kind of 3 rapid fire questions. The first question is really just out of years of having conversations with business owners and business leaders around the world, that you hear different comments of, the young folks I'm hiring are different. They're not learning this. They're not getting this in school. And my question, it hit me at one point that, why not ask the leadership experts from around the world that I have the amazing opportunity to talk to, if we could magically bring all of the school administrators from across the United States into one room, and you had only a moment to give them one piece of advice of something that they could possibly add or institute into a student's career, what would that be?
I would say toughness and tenacity. How do we teach them to not take everything on their sleeve, not understand that they're not going to get everything in the world, and every failure, they have to get tougher. Tenacity is show up to work on time. Work, if you run out of things to do, ask. Stay till your time to leave. Don't give up. And there's 1,000 things I could tell you. It's wonderful generations, Gen Z, which is the youngest ones coming in, the millennials before that. They're wonderful, creative people, but they may or may not have been held accountable. Stop giving everyone a prize if they don't earn it. Life does not work that way. You only get the customer if you're the best. You only get the job if you win it, and they're not going to give you a consolation prize after that. You've got to teach them toughness and tenacity.
So now I'm just curious. So you're saying and suggesting that it's not okay at 25 years old in the workplace to pout in the corner when you don't get what you want?
It's not okay. It's not okay to stay home from work for 5 days because you had a flat tire. It's not okay to walk in your boss's in their executive office and sit down and put their feet up on the coffee table. It's not okay.
Now, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting the rapid fire. I got to share this because it's funny. Many years ago, when I was getting started in my career, I had responsibility for one shift at a plant, and one of my employees called in sick. Called in, left a message. It was very early in the morning, and said, "My truck doesn't want to start. I won't be in today." The next day, I was around the corner, and this employee came in and was talking with the rest of the guys, and they said, "Oh, what's going on with your truck?" And he told the other employees, he said, I walked outside yesterday morning and I looked at my truck and said, do you want to start? And it didn't start. So I called in and told Amos that my truck didn't want to start. Anyhow, I'm sorry. The second question is, out of all the books you've read over the years, what is your go-to book that you continually go back to get good insights out of?
I love John Maxwell's Developing the Leader Within You. It is one of his older books. He has updated it. I can't remember what year. It's a very basic, all new employees, very basic book. How do I become a leader? Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Again, and then trying to give them practical applications. I actually love Anatomy of Peace. I think it was put out by the Harbor Institute. I can't remember. A great book about, is your heart at peace or is your heart at war? You might say, oh, thank you, Amos, for that kind information. But my heart is saying, you are not a good boss and I don't like you and I'm not going to do anything you say, or I'm barely going to. How do we do that? I love those two books, and I love Necessary Endings. I think it's by McCloud, which helps people when I'm not very good at saying goodbye to things. So it helps them walk through, how do I end something and how can the ending be better than I thought it was going to be. So those are kind of my go-to ones.
Awesome. Well, the last question is, in all the technology and software and things that are out there today, what is your favorite piece of technology or software that you find useful today?
Oh, you had to ask me this. My people would tell you. I love Chat GPT and Copilot. I love both those programs. I just planned. Shoot me, the last places I want to go is national parks and hike and get sweaty and all those things. But it was what my husband wants to do. And so I've been married a very, very, very long time. So I just had it do an itinerary for Mount Rushmore. And so I didn't see a lot of spas listed, even though I think there might be some. But the second thing I hate is large bus tours. So therefore, we're going on one all day. This is called sacrificial love. I'm trying to work up to the good attitude. But I will say those two programs, and there's thousands right now, but I think AI. Yes, I agree. It has a lot of risk, and there's a lot of risk out there. But that technology for AI, if you have not embraced it, you should embrace it. And there's tons and tons and tons of programs. I use them every day.
Awesome. Well, Marcylle, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been welcome. A pleasure. Hopefully, maybe we can have you back on again someday. Okay. And for our listeners, if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to check out our past episodes, and don't forget to follow us on whatever platform you are listening so that you can get alerts when the new ones come out. Until next time, we appreciate you.